Okay, well, it has been a while since we have done any Bible study. For those that listen on the internet, we apologize. There were both planned and unplanned things that came up. One planned miss and then two unplanned misses. So we thank you for listening and joining with us in this. We're going to start out in Joshua chapter 1, verse 10. And verse 10 and 11 give the order that they cross the Jordan in Joshua chapter 1, verse 10 and 11. Then Joshua commanded the officers or the leaders of the people, saying, pass through the camp and command the people. And there are going to be I believe, two commands given here. Prepare provisions, food, and water for yourself, for within 3 days you will cross over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which Yahweh your God is giving you to possess. And so you can imagine these people, this generation has grown up in a nomadic camp, living in tents for this moment. And they are ready now to cross in and go take the land. As we've seen, it's no easy matter. There are people living on their inheritance. They're going to ask those people to leave. They're not going to leave for the most part. And so we're going to go from chapter 1 into a story. They are coming in across the Jordan on an east-west highway that stretches across the desert over to the Euphrates River into Mesopotamia. And it is an invasion route. So there is a fortified city guarding this invasion route. That is the way we see those fortified cities throughout Canaan, the land of Canaan, guarding the invasion routes, the roads that armies would pass over to invade. And so here we see pictures. I think I must have forgotten to edit, but those are pictures of them crossing the Jordan River. The picture right in the middle is what the Jordan is, an actual photograph of the Jordan. The small picture, an actual photograph of the Jordan River. And so we're going to see that they pass over on dry land. In the same way that God parted the water at the Red Sea, he does that again. And I think that is huge symbolism, because before God created anything, when he had created planet Earth, it was covered with water, as we open up in Genesis. And God lifting the land up is that same act that he does at the Red Sea and here. He is making it possible for man to travel and survive across the water. Then you see these other pictures here. Normally I would show you one and then another of them carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The priests are following the prescriptions. They're not touching the Ark. They're using the acacia poles to carry it. And they lead the way into the promised land across the dry land. And you see the Israelites in the background coming after them as they cross. So they are on the east side of the Jordan, and 3 tribes, the tribe of Reuben, the oldest son, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh is so large that they take property on the east side of the Jordan, and then they have another allotment on the west side in the land of Canaan, in the promised land. And so they make a provision here for those 3 tribes to stay on the east side. Now, I will say, as we stretch through the Old Testament, Reuben, Gad, and half Manasseh kind of disappear. They kind of fade out of the stories because they are so vulnerable on that east side to nomads and raiders and invasions that they kind of phase out later in the story. So we go on to verses 12 and 13. This is the second thing he said. So first thing, 3 days provisions, we're going to cross the river. And to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, Josh spoke, saying, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is giving you rest and is giving you this land on the east side of the Jordan. And so Moses had addressed it in Deuteronomy, and they had been made a special provision. Now, this was the worry that they would take their land. So Israel had fought a minor war with Moab prior to this. So they were seasoned warriors by this point. They had defeated Moab in that war, and there was a fear that Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh would receive the benefits of that war and have their land. Then they would not help the other tribes when they went across the river to get their land. So everybody was tense. There's one situation where they think that Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad are not going to help, and everybody's putting their hand on their sword hilt. You don't help, we're gonna attack you. That's the worst kind of betrayal, for us to fight to help you get your land, but you not to help us. So land on the east side of the Jordan River. Joshua continues in verse 14, your wives, your little ones, your livestock shall remain in this land which Moses gave you on this side of the Jordan, but you men, you warriors, shall pass before your brethren armed, with your sword and your shield and your helmets and your spears, all your mighty men of valor. And that is the word Gabor there. When it says men, mighty men, that's Gabor, warriors, all your warriors, and you will help them, your brethren who are on the west side. You must fulfill your duty. It goes on in verse 15. Until the Lord has given your brethren rest. What rest means there is peace. You do not have to stay armed all the time. You do not have to defend. We have defeated the enemy and driven them from the land until they are safe. As he has given you, Reuben, Gad, half Manasseh on the east side, and they also have taken possession of the land which Yahweh your God has given them on the west side. Then you shall return to your land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on this side of the Jordan toward the sunrise. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So toward the sunrise is on the east side of the Jordan. So all that seems like a lot, but it is because there's a lot of tension about this. Because, those warriors, they have the land. They don't want to leave their wives and kids, even though there's no immediate threat. They want to start plowing their fields and things and irrigating and getting things ready, set up their houses. And so there's a lot of tension, behind this statement here. So the promise is made. Going back to see where Moses made that promise, it was in Numbers 32, verses 16 and 17. They approached Moses, Gad, Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh. They said to Moses, we simply want to build pens for our livestock. We want to build fortified towns for our wives and children. Then we'll arm ourselves and lead our fellow Israelites into battle until we have brought them safely to their land. Meanwhile, our families will stay in the fortified towns we build here, so we will be safe from any attacks. The promise continued in verse 18 and 19. We will not return to our homes until all the people of Israel have received their portions of land. But we do not claim any of the land on the west side of the Jordan. We would rather live here on the east side and accept this as our land grant. Now, this is the interesting thing about the book of Joshua. So long as they all fight together under Joshua's leadership, they are undefeated. They are badly outnumbered on many occasions. The Canaanites have technological advantage. They have chariots, and the Israelites don't have chariots. They have more steel weapons. The Israelites are still using bronze weapons. And so, but when they fight together, they are undefeated. Now, halfway through the book of Joshua, we'll see, and I've never understood, because promises like this, we will fight until everybody is safe. Everybody has their property. They were undefeated. But halfway through the book, they begin distributing the land to the different tribes, and the coalition falls apart. Everybody wants to go to their land and develop it. They don't want to fight anymore once they get their land. So I have never understood. That's one of the mysteries for me. Why did they divide the land when they did? I assume there was no choice, that things were about to come unglued if they did not give people their portion of land. But the failure of Israel, this is a hard thing they are asked to do. We've talked about it. They're terrified to go in and have to violently push people off their land, even though they feel that it is rightfully their inheritance. It is still hard to violently push people off. We know that. However, in the end, they lose steam, and they do not push all the Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, Hittites. They don't push them off the land, and that is their downfall. Those people begin to influence them, and people say, well, it's not cool to have to worship Yahweh. Our gods are a lot more fun. You don't have to be good. You don't have to be moral to worship our gods. If you want to drink and run around and whatever, you can do that and worship the pagan gods. But that old Yahweh, he's boring, and he has all these rules. That's the downfall. That is also what weakens Christianity. If we had no immoral temptations whatsoever, if people couldn't get on the internet and look at stuff, if people couldn't drink alcohol, there would still be sin. But if we all worked together and we had no people that did not love Jesus, gambling and drinking and, whatever, all the sinful things, it would be easier for us not to sin. And so their downfall, in the end, people say, that the conquest is a horrible thing. The tragedy is that they didn't finish it, that they started it and they didn't finish it. And that was their downfall. Anyway, that's my commentary on it. So, the response of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, they answered Joshua in verse 16, all you command us, we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we heeded Moses, so we will heed you. Very important. There is a smooth transition from Moses to Joshua. That's a very important thing in the establishment of the country. We see after Joshua the awful book of Judges, and it's meant to be awful. It's a warning about leadership, but they have some awful, awful, awful leaders. But the transition here at this vital time, if they do not have good leadership, they fall apart. They disintegrate. They disappear. Did God have a plan for the Israelites to survive? Are there still Israelites anywhere in the world that we know of? They sure are. So God knew what he was doing. But this right here, this transition does not get enough credit. The transition from Moses, who had led them throughout the wilderness, to Joshua, leading them into the promised land, is a very smooth one. And you see it right here. Just as we heeded Moses, so will we heed you. You don't get that. If Joshua had as much rebellion as Moses did at times, they would have fallen apart. So that's a very big thing, and that's a working of God selecting a man like Joshua to come after Moses. Only Yahweh be your God. Only Yahweh your God be with you as he was with Moses. And that is a blessing that they are saying unto him. We will heed you as we heeded Moses. God bless you to make good decisions. Whoever rebels against your command, Joshua, does not heed your words, does not do all that you command him, shall be put to death. We will see that they will be put to death. Only be strong and of courage, which is the same thing that God. Stand strong. You get up there and lead. You say what God tells you to say. There was one condition, that they were willing to follow Joshua if he showed clear evidence that he was being led by God. And that's what we want in leaders. We can put up with a lot of things from leaders as long as we believe they are led by God, that they are deferring to God, and Joshua certainly was. So I think that I'm going to, we are ready to go into chapter 2 with Rahab. I think I might cut us short a little bit right here today, just because that's a good, clean place to break and start chapter 2 next week. Are there any questions or comments about chapter 1? They are poised to cross the river. What we'll see next time in chapter 2 is they cross over, they go to Gilgal and make a camp inside the promised land on the banks of the Jordan. And they begin, he sends spies in to look over Jericho, and what a tough thing is those I'll go ahead and show you the spies come at night, and this is the men from Jericho, the Canaanite men coming to search for the spies. Rahab has hidden them, as you know, on the roof. And so that's where we'll be going next week. And as y'all probably know, Rahab is one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament. And it is because she has nothing. And she is I consider her a victim of her life and the times, and she reaches out for the hand of God. She reaches out for salvation. She craves salvation, and that is uncommon. Desperate people need to reach out for God because he will always take their hand. And so she is an inspiration to me and one of my favorite characters. I will tell you a funny story. I was working at the Christian school last year, and they have, instead of having Halloween, they have Reformation Day. So they remember Martin Luther and all the Reformation, and so they dress like characters from the Reformation. But they have to have very strict rules of what kind of costumes the kids can wear, because in our society, kids will wear very inappropriate costumes, with a sword sticking out of the side of their head and stuff like that, if they don't have very strict rules. Even Bible characters, they say they have a rule that it has to be a Bible character of good repute, so that people don't come in with some kind of, like dress like Satan or something, because that's not illegitimate. And kids like to get away with stuff. And so we had the meeting, and they told the teachers this is the rule on Bible characters. They have to be of good repute. And so I raised my hand and I asked the principal, I was like, is Rahab of good repute? And the principal just was deer in the head, like kind of froze, because didn't want to say, because Rahab is good, didn't want to say Rahab was bad, but at the same time, you could dress like Rahab and not be appropriate for Reformation Day. So that was a Bible joke, and I was meant to be a smart aleck. So I know y'all don't believe that I could be a smart aleck, but that was my plan. So anyway, let's say a prayer and be dismissed.